Good evening, everybody. My name is Bert Dicht, and I am the Vice President of Membership for the National Space Society. And on behalf of Larry Ahern, Vice President of Chapters, we'd like to welcome you to this NSS Town Hall Conversation with the Presidents. It's hard to believe it's been about a year since we've started organizing these space forums and town halls, and we really do appreciate the consistent attendance and participation. It has just been fabulous. And I think you're really going to enjoy this town hall session. I'll be talking about the speakers in a second. Let me just give you a brief agenda. I'm going to deviate a little from our normal convention and do our NSS announcements up front. This will allow us to continue on a little bit longer. So in case the session runs and we have great conversation, we don't want to interrupt that. I'll also be talking about what's upcoming next with Space Forums, talking about our virtual etiquette. Then we'll go into the introductions and the panel session and Q&A. So sit back, enjoy, and we're going to have a good time tonight. First, I just want to remind you of all of the opportunities you have to engage with NSS, our space.nss.org NSS website, our InsideNSS.org, the NSS membership portal that is for members only. I will be posting these links in the chat. Our YouTube channel, the National Space Society, our Facebook page, and Twitter. We have made great inroads in making sure we have up-to-date and relevant content. So I encourage all of you to check those out and actually comment and post, and we'd love to engage with you. Also, if you are supporting our cause, which I know you do, you enjoy these programs like the Space Forums and Town Halls, I encourage you to make a donation to support NSS. It's really gratifying. I've done this kind of promo before at these events, and we've seen donations come in, and really want to thank everybody who supports not only NSS through your membership, but also the donations. So we thank you for that. And finally, at the end of the session tonight, I'll ask you to take a few minutes to complete a post-town hall survey. It's anonymous, just a few questions. It's going to help us. Your feedback will help us ensure we can do some great programming in the future and make sure we do things to keep improving the content and the quality of these events. What's coming up next? 2 weeks from tonight, we've got a space forum featuring Dale Scran, our NSS Senior Vice President and Senior Operating Officer. It's titled New Rides to the Moon. It's a review of the current and upcoming vehicles that's going to carry humanity back to the moon. So be sure not to miss it. Dale is an expert in this area, so I know you're going to find it fun and informative as well. And what we've also done, and I thank Fred Becker for putting together a page on our on our space.nss website, which actually has all of our town halls and space forums listed. We are slowly getting there, putting all of the previous events on in terms of the recordings. So you're going to be able to go there and look back at all of these space forums and town halls. And I do apologize for how long it's taking. We're working to get it done. Most of the recent ones are there, but you will also see an upcoming schedule. And after the 25th, we got an event on the 8th with Scott Pace, the former executive secretary of the National Space Council, and also an NSS officer. On the 22nd, we have a Space Law Students panel that's going to be moderated by our president, Michelle Hanlon. And on the 6th of May, we've got a real treat too, Early Career Aerospace Professionals panel that's going to be moderated by Chantel Beyer. On the 20th of May, we're going to preview the Virtual International Space Development Conference, the ISDC. Yes, this year it will be virtual. So we'll give you a heads up, what's happening, speakers, and so on. And then, of course, on June 3rd, since we can't have the in-person ISDC, we're going to be presenting some NSS awards virtually to all of you as well to view that. And then finally, of course, in June sometime will be the virtual ISDC. So a lot more to come with that. So thank you for allowing me to make those brief presentations. And let me talk a little bit about our virtual etiquette. To submit a question, please use the Q&A function. That way it goes right to the panelists. They can see it. No one else sees it actually, but it allows us to focus in on those questions. If you put it in the chat, it can be lost with all those other things that are put in chat. If you do want to use the chat to comment, sometimes people want to say something or share something, I ask that you be respectful of the panelists and audience because the chat is open to everybody. And finally, it's best when you're viewing this to view it in speaker mode. That way you can key in on whoever is speaking, and just a better way to watch the whole presentation. So let me now go into the introductions, and what I'm going to do first is actually introduce our moderator, the esteemed space author and historian and editor-in-chief of our Ad Astra magazine, Rod Pyle. Rod is going to moderate tonight's event, and then also, before starting, introduce our guest speakers. So Rod, let me turn it over to you. And what I'll do is I'm going to take off the stop to share mode, and we'll let it go right back to you. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you dug out that very old picture of me when my beard was still had some color in it. So Bert, thank you very much. You're doing a great job as always. Thanks for all that you and Larry and Fred do. This is a real gift to all of us. And for me, it's an honor to be moderating this august panels of leaders tonight. So let's meet our contestants. I wish I had some game show music here. Janet Ivey is an NSS governor and is also the president of Explore Mars, a sister group of ours. She created the multi-Emmy award-winning PBS show Janet's Planet. And when I say multi, I mean like a whole shelf that would cover 2 walls of a room, I think, which she continues to produce. She's a dynamic STEM promoter, a tireless advocate for children, and has mentored countless young people all over the world. Janet's mission has and always will be to enrich the lives of children via art and science, multimedia education, and intelligent, informative programming that focuses on space exploration. Next up is President Emeritus, as of last night, Jeffrey Notkin, who took on that job only a handful of years after joining the NSS as a governor, which is, I think, how he came in the first place. That's a big honor. Jeff owns a company called Aerolite Meteorites, which is a world leader in meteorite recovery, research, sales, and education. And they've got some mighty fine stuff if you ever have a chance to see their showroom in Tucson. He's an Emmy award-winning producer himself and also on-camera talent, notably appearing in 3 seasons of Meteorite Men on the Discovery Networks, which is a lot of fun if you've never seen it, and 2 seasons of STEM journals. Jeff has appeared in many other TV and radio shows and produced a number of independent feature films and documentaries, is a prolific writer, and a lifetime member of the Explorers Club, for which I envy him greatly. Finally, and most important to me, he is the consulting art director for Ad Astra magazine, and we're very grateful to him for his skills. Finally, Michelle Hanlon, the NSS's new president. Yay, welcome, Michelle. She also chairs the International Committee for the NSS and serves on the Policy Committee. But as if that wasn't enough, Michelle is the co-director of the Center for Air and Space Law and an instructor of aviation and space law at the University of Mississippi School of Law. She's also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Space Law and co-founder of the president of For All Moonkind, a nonprofit corporation that is the only organization in the world focused on protecting human cultural heritage in outer space. Michelle, how the heck are you going to have time to be our president? That is a very full slate. I'm impressed. I can only do 4 things at a time. I don't know how you do it.
Well, I'm going to be taking copious notes from the President Emeritus and the President of the Mars Explorers, because I'm going to make sure that I'm really focused. This is the most important job I have. Well, I know there's a lot of students on, so thank you, students, for joining us tonight. And you are my most important job, so this will be my second most important job.
Perfect. All right, you overachievers, let's get down to business. So first, I'd like to address a couple of questions to Janet and to Jeffrey. Jeff, you're up first. Can you give us some insight on your experiences as president of the NSS? What were some of the highlights of your tenure, and what are some of the tasks that you feel remain to be completed, if any?
How much time do we have, Rod? 2 or 3 hours?
Let's see. Yeah, we can go till tomorrow.
Excellent. My presidency started off with a great deal of excitement, and my first official duty, actually even before it was announced, was interviewing the great Hugh Downs. And a small group of NSS officers went up to Phoenix to visit him at his residence. And Hugh was the chair of the Board of Governors for many, many years. And he was a devoted spaceflight advocate. He was also a hero to anyone in television, broadcast journalism. Just a superhero. He accomplished so much in his life. So we presented Hugh with the Lifetime Achievement Award. And then when I returned home, I thought, what a way to start. And then when I returned home, I had an email waiting for me from Anita Gale, who at the time was the NSS secretary and member of the board of directors. And as of yesterday is our new chair of the executive committee. And she is a human dynamo, and she was an engineer on the shuttle space program and a devoted educator. This email said to me, Jeff, welcome. We're excited to have you as president. As you may know, I'm one of the co-founders of the International Space Settlement Design Competition. And to welcome you, I would like to invite you to attend at Kennedy Space Center and be a judge. So for a lifetime, imagine my degree of excitement. I've just been hanging out with Hugh Downs, and then I come home, and here is a lifetime spaceflight nerd receiving an official invitation to go to an event at Kennedy Space Center. I thought, well, we could just stop there and I'd be happy. So I accepted Anita's invitation. I think I shouldn't, I suppose she may have been sending it as a courtesy, and it was a genuine offer, but she said, I know you're busy, I don't know if you'd have time. And I said, oh, I'm making time. So I booked my flight in July to go. And if those of you who've been to Florida in July, you can't really dress like this, but I wanted to make a good impression. And then Anita said, oh, well, since you're here, would you mind addressing the students? Like, would you mind addressing the students at the opening of this thing at Kennedy Space Center? And then one thing led to another, and we did the closing address and the prizes. And I was so enraptured by this experience of being with these approximately 300 students from around the world who were competing to design a relevant engineering, space-related engineering project, that I said, I just always want to be here now. And one of my goals in life, I know Janet and Michelle will both be able to relate to this, is to try and connect with students who want to do more, who want more out of their lives and more out of education, because I know what it's like to be stuck at a pedantic school that doesn't care about you. I went to terribly strict all boys British private school in South London. It was just taken straight out of a Dickens novel. And I really wanted to be a scientist, and I wanted to embrace science, and it was so dull. And you would also get beaten with a cane if your physics equation was off or whatever. So I have to thank Anita for that, and Mark Hopkins and Lynn Zielinski, who organized the Hugh Downs events. So it started off just marvelous. And then we had ISTC after that. And in the first few days and weeks, I realized that there is an enormous landscape of opportunity there. There's so many things that I wanted to do. And how do you choose? How do you decide? And I may be guilty of getting a bit over enthusiastic at times. I go, oh, I'm going to do this, and we're going to do a new show, and I'm going to. One of my great plans for this year that didn't happen, I wanted to travel around the States and visit all the NSS chapters in the States and make them feel included and produce a president's report on the chapters. And of course, that couldn't happen because of COVID and other reasons. But I suppose the lesson I learned is you have to decide which are the most meaningful and important things. And the job of president of a spaceflight nonprofit could easily be a full-time job and absolutely nothing else. And there were numerous times over the past 2 years where I thought, I wish I was wealthy and didn't have to work, or I'd retired very young and I could just do this and nothing else. But it wasn't possible. So I learned to juggle. It's been an amazing experience. I would say the things that most need to be completed, this is not a new topic to anyone on this call, but the people on this call can solve this problem. And that is, how do we attract younger members? What are we doing wrong? How can we do better? And I've learned that perhaps it's a simplification, but in large part, millennials are very independent and autonomous, and they're not necessarily joiners of traditional organizations in the same way that Rod's generation and my generation. We love to join the comic book club or the trains society or whatever it was and get your membership card, and things are different now. So our brains need to evolve, and I want to, as you all know, I'm continuing with society in other capacities, but so grateful that our new president, Michelle Hanlon, is herself a professor, and a professor of space law. And one of the reasons I was so excited that she accepted the nomination is because she and people like her can be conduits, can attract students and younger spaceflight professionals by saying, here's who we are, this is what we do, come join. It's not enough to do the traditional model where we would go to events and hand out flyers. It doesn't really work so well anymore, although that still has some merit. So that's what, if I could see one thing, it would be that. It would be to bring our median age down and to get a fresh perspective. It's not just we have older members, we want younger members, we want younger ideas too. The generation that's in college now, they are really smart and accomplished. They've grown up in the internet age. They have resources that we just didn't have when we were kids. So I have enormous expectations for outstanding levels of brilliance of this generation that's coming into the spaceflight world. I'm just glad to be able to see it. Back to you, Rod.
Thank you. Well, Jeff, I just want you to know you've always dressed like a wealthy man, so I appreciate the bashing.
Oh,
you've punctured my image of you of having a huge trust fund, so I guess that's gone forever. So
I hope you noticed my Skylab tie. That's actually the first time I've ever worn it. I'm wearing it for this special occasion. My beloved Skylab tie. I saved it for a special occasion. You know.
I was looking.
Yes, alas, I'm not a trust fund. Not a trust fund, baby. Wish I was.
Well, Janet, I have a similar question for you, but I'm going to phrase it a little differently. First off, how would you characterize your role as the president of Explore Mars, which is a different group but serving similar goals? And secondly, can you tell us a bit about your time as the governor for the NSS?
Well, do you mind if I answer those a bit in reverse?
Not a bit.
Okay, so Jeff and I have an interesting connection. We became governors back in 2014 at the Toronto ISDC. I think he had been doing some other things, and Howard Bloom says, hey, how about you becoming an NSS governor? I had spoken on a Women in Space panel and was immediately surrounded by Lynn Zielinski and a few others, and they said, would you be, how would you like to be an NSS governor? Well, Jeff and I had a lovely time, and then we ended up getting invited out to a Dunlap observatory to speak to children. We're on our way back, and it was over, usually ISDC's over Memorial Weekend. And so we both had flights home. So literally I can remember standing in this incredible boardroom with all of the board of directors. And there was this moment of like, would you like for us to be NSS governors or not? Because we got, got some places to be. Love ya, mean it. Looking forward. And so to anybody out there in that room that day, sorry, it meant nothing personal. Thank you for saying yes and going ahead and switching around how you voted us in. So Jeff and I have this interesting connection that we literally became NSS governors at the same time. And it's been a privilege. I mean, it's like, look at the people they list on there. I remember the first time I looked at the website and I was like, my name is on the middle of all of these people. And so, adore Howard Bloom. Carlton Johnson is the perfect chairman of the Board of Governors. And he's just, wonderful people, again, working for the same goal of like, how do we get this advocacy and policy that we advocate for? How do we get that out to the public? So, next year, 2022, I hop in and out of committees that we're going to have a big gala that's going to be a beautiful fundraiser for NSS. Harry Hamlin and Howard Bloom have been really pushing that all forward. We would have had a really humdinger in 2020, got to tell you. Didn't happen. So again, 2022, it's going to be a lovely affair. But yeah, it's just been stupendous. It's like, I can remember coming to, St. Louis a few years ago in the capacity of a governor, being able to work alongside the space settlement kids. I had this bright idea that, hey, we should do speed networking. And so some of you are a little hard pressed sometimes to understand the value of that for kids. So there were some old MacArthur Douglas folks in the lobby. So we didn't have a lot of people show up to speed network with these kiddos. So I was like, kids, follow me. So all of a sudden we connected them, and you should have seen these amazing children listening to these people who had actually built the things that had helped us get to the moon the first time. And it was, I think at that point, it's like, oh, this generational, because there's a knowledge bank out there that needs to be connected. So that was like one of my fun moments of just being live and in person and going, all right, this is my dream of connecting the knowledge bank with these young people coming up behind. And then, funny enough, Jeff and I do another first thing together. The year that he becomes president of NSS, I get asked to be a president of Explore Mars. Jeff is totally telling the truth that, these are non-paid positions when we say yes, but it is our care and love of, I mean, Jeff, I had an experience as a kid. I was in 5th grade. Miss Ernestine Yarborough, she always gets a shout out, my favorite teacher ever, had a star party on a Friday night in Covington, Tennessee, home of Isaac Hayes and the Charms Blow Pop. And so good place to grow up, but not a lot of astronomy's going on there. But she's got a telescope, and I remember looking through that and falling in love with space. And so, having had, we had the similar experience of being governors, we had the similar experience of being chosen as presidents of these things, but, it can at times be a full-time job. And then you're trying to balance, what I do for my education outreach is Janet's Planet, or the many other things that and organizations I'm involved in. The thing that it has afforded me is the ability, from Hugh Downs on Jeff's side, it's like here in another month or so, I'll get to sit down with Ann Duran and, Carl Sagan's wife and get to be up close and personal. Last fall, Ron Sparkman and I are interviewing Bill Nye, the Science Guy. So that is the payment. Do you know what I mean? That I get to rub elbows with incredible greats in science and space. And again, what a thrill that is. And then I get to have a bit of say and a bit of, kind of twisting the elbows and hi guys, how about we do this? And how about we move this forward? And, there's all kinds of personalities and ideas, and everybody has different ideologies about things that we should be doing or could be doing. And I'm grateful to say that from CEO Chris Carberry at Explore Mars and the board, they've been incredible. And, it's like I'll come up with some quirky idea and I might get an email that sounds a little odd. And sometimes sometimes they'll be won over. Some other times it might be something I'll tell you, Michelle, but you're in space law. I'm thinking with a lawyer, how can you say no to that, man? You guys have got a winner in her. By decree, I say, and thusly, and she'll lawyer you. Yeah, it's like, I can't wait for her to write some great concepts for NSS. But I think for me, it's just about, at some point, I said yes, because I believe in the mission. I want to see footprints on the red planet. And what a thrill and what a privilege opportunity to kind of have a say in space policy and space advocacy. What? From a little girl in West Tennessee to where I am now. I mean, what a gift. So there are times that it's like, if you guys are out there wondering, well, why aren't they doing this? And they should be doing this. And Trust me, folks, when it's like, we're a much smaller organization in size than the NSS. And so I'm telling you, there's midnight oil burning, and there are 2:30 a.m., press releases you're trying to draft. Trust me when I say our plan is at Explore Mars and for my time, for however long the NSS will have me as a board of governor, it's always about how many people can we get talking about space exploration at the dinner table, the breakfast table, in the lunch counter, and at Waffle House. Do you know what I mean? It's like when we are finally, it's ubiquitous, and technology and science is something. It's like, no, of course, I love that science stuff. That's my goal. And so, yeah, to join with folks like you and say, hey, and by the way, let's make sure that all the knowledge bank and the genius that's here, let's bring up all these young people, K through 12, college, postgraduate. Let's bring all of those people. And then let's bring also, Gen Z,
Yeah.
Gen X, my age, and older, and say, hey, come on, we're all part of this. It's all part of humanity. So, many lessons learned. There are different ways to, solve problems. At one point, there was a board of director of Explore Mars that vehemently disagreed with my stance on something, and I vehemently disagreed with his stance. But he had written an email where he let me know what his grandchildren called. He was recounting something he had done with his grandchildren. So to make sure that he knew that I wasn't trying to be obstinate for no reason. I was just standing in what my principled self, it felt like this was where I needed to stake my claim. I told him my grandma name, which is Jan. I'm a step grandma. And so I called him by his grandpa name, and I said, we will find common ground. You are, and I am a Jan, and I'm pretty sure that we care about some of the very same things. And it was like the moment where that was the finding of the common ground. And now he's my best editor and one of my finest really like allies. So I would say that, Michelle, as you're finding your way, it's like there may be folks that, always won't agree with you, but I just keep finding, and this is what I keep telling the kids that I work with, find the common ground. There's always somewhere. And that's how we'll move humanity out there on the moon and onto Mars.
Well, compliments to Lynn Zielinski for having brought you in. That was a wonderful decision. And just so you know it, as far as I know, the governors are a lifetime appointment, so you're not getting away from us anytime soon. A question for all three of you, and in particular Janet and Jeff, but also Michelle, I'd like your input. As media professionals, how do you think we can better utilize the media to further our goals? And I mean that in terms not just of recruitment and garnering more members, but also in what I think is and always should be a big priority of ours, which is winning mind share of the broader public of what this great mission is. Janet, why don't you start?
Can I comment on something? I'll turn it back to Janet, but I've got to say one thing that's relevant to this. I suddenly realized while Janet was speaking, she's so eloquent, you'd think she was on television, that if it wasn't for Howard Bloom, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. And Howard Bloom is a great spaceflight activist. He is a member of active member of the Board of Governors and the Governor's Council. And I met Howard years ago at a spaceflight event. I don't even remember what it was. I think it was a new space thing. And we ended up being on the same panel on a Sunday morning. And some people on the panel were very hungover, and not me, and not Howard. And we got talking, and he was so interesting. And then at the end of the panel, I said, wait a second, you're not the same Howard Bloom that's the music business manager, are you? And he goes, oh, yes, yeah, managed Springsteen and Marley and Prince and all of this. And I go, man, can you get me Paul Simon tickets on the panel? And that's how we became friends. And he introduced me to Jan. He suggested me for Board of Governors. And that day that we went, it was the David Dunlap Observatory, Janet, in Richmond Hill, outside of Toronto. That's when we sort of met. And I was looking at her, I was going, crikey, that's Janet from Janet's Planet. And we had this marvelous thing. But what I wanted to tell you, Janet, is have you, or I'm sure some other people on this call, but have you seen Umbrella Academy, the comic book sci-fi adventure show on Netflix?
Yes.
So did you realize the cosmic significance? The headquarters of the time travel people, the HQ, is Dunlap Observatory, where we met. I just almost went into orbit when I saw that. And I go, no wonder the time travel people are so powerful. They're based at the Dunlap Observatory where Janet and I met. So that was my monster digression. The answer to your question, Rod, I think, no, I said I'd hand it back to Janet. Janet,
no, you go ahead. You're on a roll. No, you continue.
I think we need a variety of programming and media. One thing that works for one person is not going to work for another. I'm a film producer and a director, as you know, and I love classic film and I like the big setups and grand old movies, but that's not the way of the world now, unless you go and sit down and watch a classic movie. It's short form content. And it's so much easier to make short form films. And if you gosh, the Planetary Society do this so well. You can do searches for all kinds of science and astronomical terms, and what comes up? An excellent short video from the Planetary Society narrated by Bill Nye. No wonder they do so well. That's a really good way to connect with people. Informative short films about loads of different things. But we just got to make it exciting. How can spaceflight? It's the most exciting thing that exists. It's even more exciting than meteorites, because meteorites just fall out of the sky randomly and they land here. Spaceflight, we're actually taking the trouble to send people to where meteorites come from. So we have to just convey that enthusiasm. That's it. In short form video, long form video, whatever we do, webinars like this kind of thing, this kind of free, ongoing, informative, fun exchange. Again, I take my hat off to Bert and Larry for doing this. This is the way.
No, it is the way. And it's like, I've attended several of the space forums, the one with Terry Virts, even some of my kids, the parents allowed their kids to stay up late to watch those. The one about the art a few weeks ago was just beautiful and amazing. For us, Drinks with Explore Mars has been a real hit with people and a real time, especially, at the big, we're coming up, guys, about on the year mark of when our world as we know it shut down and changed so drastically. And I remember it's like we had a kind of like, a board meeting about what are our next steps. And we saw all of this space symposium look like it was not going to happen. And what were we going to do? And what blah, blah, blah. And so I remember, again, there was a conversation about us, will we charge anything? And I just remembered at that moment in time, my way of income had pretty much gone the way of the dinosaur. Everything in the calendar had evaporated. As and for how long I didn't really know. And I thought, if I'm even thinking, what's that next thing or what's that going to look like? And I just remember saying to everybody, God bless them for listening. I just said, whatever we do now, we're going to be remembered for the rest of the time. And I said, so I don't think we can charge. It's got to be a free kind of webinars. It's got to be open to everybody. I said, later down the road, we'll create some mechanism. It's like you can give $1 or however. And so you kind of got to let people, I think there has to be this open arm policy of like, come in, get to know us. Not everybody's going to stay. It won't always, or the subject matter won't always be somebody's cup of tea. But Jeff is right. It's got to be content. It's got to be meaningful, engaging social media. You've got to be, and I heard Emily Calandrelli, who's a brilliant space influencer and communicator, say, it's got to be the 3 F's. It's got to be frequent, first class, and, first rate. And you've got to, and again, it's like, I can make 2 of those. Yeah, I can make it fast and, frequent and, first rate. It's like all of those things. It's like, you're going, whew, how do I do all of that? But the social media's got to be there. You've got to, and again, it's weird. TikTok, I know there's a certain age, like I'm kind of I don't sometimes get it all, but again, they're fantastic places. There are forums now on Clubhouse, on all of these other mechanisms, and you kind of get to that point where your mind wants to go, I can't keep up with all of these things. But it's so very important. There are incredible science conversations happening with incredible science influencers on TikTok, that they are engaging with the public in a way that maybe they wouldn't engage in a space forum or an Explore Mars webinar. So it is a constant evaluating of like, let's get that younger talent that are those science communicators in. Let's lean in. Let's say, hey, let's partner. We'll promote your brand. If you're out there promoting Explore Mars and this and that, we'll include you in some of these conversations. So it's everything, right? Because we're moving at this exponential rate, not only in the technology and the development and where we're going to space and how we're going and how fast we're going, but it's also how we communicate. And sometimes it is a 15-second, Instagram kind of story, and that's enough. It's like, let's reel them in, but it takes commitment and time. And, there are times that I'm getting asked for, hey, can you provide this? Can you provide this? And you're like, ooh, let me go don the hair and the lipstick and try to get this content out there. It's exhausting. And I don't know of one influencer out there that you wouldn't talk to that says it's a doggone grind to make that good content every day. But, with as many people as you have, find volunteers. Anybody out there want to volunteer for Michelle and help her out with the social media here at NSS? She will, I'm pretty sure she might say yes. So that's my idea. Figure out every platform you can find yourself on and open your arms wide and say, come. And I do think the money follows eventually, when it's like Bert's doing a brilliant job of like, donate to NSS. And you wouldn't be surprised, but it's like $5 goes a long way. $10 can go a long way. It's give at the level that you feel comfortable. You're supporting what you love. And then we've had the good fortune that it's like when we thought, oh, what are we going to do to pay all the bills this month at Explore Mars? And it always comes. So that's where I put my faith, that it always
Janet,
Right.
did you know that we did that with Ask for Volunteers? I think that's two really good bits of advice. Partner with young influencers and ask for help. So we had ages, the NSS Instagram account was dormant. And I was really frustrated by that. I was trying to find a solution. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to post on Twitter asking for a volunteer. And I had a reply that day. The gentleman who replied, Jared Frankel, and his colleague, Dustin Smith, they're still doing it. They're doing a brilliant job. So that would be a bit of unasked for advice, I think, to pass along to Michelle. And I wish I thought of doing that earlier. Unfortunately, she has an army of, I imagine, brilliant students to assist with that, we hope. Can I
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Michelle a question, actually, Rod, if you don't mind, that was sparked by something that Janet said, and that was her mentioning having drinks with Explore Mars. And a couple of years ago, we were trying to get something going at ISDC that would be appealing to SEDS, to the Students for the Exploration Discovery of Space, a great group that I love and have had a good relationship with for years. And I wanted to have a SEDS presence there, and I was talking to the then president, and he said, our trouble is we don't know anyone. We don't know any of the officers at NSS, so we feel a bit lost. And if we had our own space there, maybe it would be different. So do you have any thoughts about physical events, interactions, not just media? Does it have to be media? Can we do hands-on things like Janet said? Let's have drinks with Explore Mars. Are there ways to engage student-aged people with that sort of function?
So I think that's, I was going to say, I don't have an Emmy or a TV show, or, I'm just a lawyer. I was an M&A lawyer. I think my students will tell you, you get her started, she doesn't shut up. So I'm really good at content because I just But
that's all it is.
Yeah, and it's all about space law. My classes are 3 hours long, and sometimes even my eyes glaze over. But it is what I'm getting out of this, and what I think is so important. And it's something that I heard earlier today is we need to keep the conversation about space alive and going on. And it doesn't matter if it's in person and having 20 students over with a bag lunch, or if it's on a Zoom with 5 people, 10 people. I do like you, Janet. I say yes to everything. Because to me, I'm so passionate about getting people to learn about how important space is, that I don't care if I'm on Zoom from 7 a.m. in Australia to midnight here, because these are people who reached out to me who would like to learn. And, you know, if I have an audience that just wants to learn, it makes me feel so good, right? So I think that it's that availability, and what you just said, Jeff, this being able to let people know I'm accessible. You know, I'm not Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. Nobody at NSS is Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. You know, we are here. If you ask us a question, if you were to stop us in a Zoom and throw something in the chat, or, you know, when we are live again and, you know, we're walking by and you just say, can I ask you a question? I guarantee you'll get like an hour-long answer, you know, because it'll be like, oh yeah. And well, then let me tell you about, you know, For All Mankind. And then, you know, Janet talks about boot prints on Mars, and I'm going to go save them and protect them after they're there, you know, because I'm protecting them, blah, you know, so I can, so it's the one thing I would add to what all of the wisdom you have shared is really getting out of this space bubble. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not a scientist. And I think a lot of people think, oh, it's STEM, and so I'm not going to do it. And that's absolutely not true. You don't have to be an engineer or a scientist or a mathematician to be involved in space. Everything we do on Earth, we're going to need to do in space. And working here at Mississippi, we have a task force looking at things that we need in space that we can actually source from underprivileged communities. You know, things like the fabric for astronaut suits, you know, things like, and I'm not smart enough to think of all of them, but, you know, people are coming to us to say, okay, well, we'll need this. And we'll say, okay, we'll go out to our network and see, you know, hey, Detroit, do you have anybody who would be able to fill this need, and so forth. And so getting people who traditionally wouldn't be involved in space is one of my goals at NSS and at Mississippi. I get on before COVID, I would ride the bus to school, much to, I think, my students' chagrin. None of them live near me, I don't think, but I get on the bus and I hand out my card and I say, hey, do you know that Mississippi has the best space law center in the country? And that, you know, half the kids are, you know, half asleep anyway. Like, oh my God, why are you talking to me? And I'm like, space, you know what, how good it, and I am the crazy moon lady, you know, and I wear that hat proudly. But that is my passion and I have been in so many adult conversations and receptions where I talk about my passion for all mankind, for protecting history and space, and see people's eyes glaze over. When I talk to students, yeah, one or two of them kind of roll their eyes a bit, but the majority of them, I would say 98% of my students are filled with that passion and understand the inspiration and understand the promise of space. And, you know, Jeff, you talked about how this next generation, I mean, our future is bright. I can tell you my students are complete overachievers. And so I was thinking back to, you know, when Rod, you said, how are you going to juggle all this? And first of all, we have these tremendous synergies between the roles that I have, you know, and it's all about the law. And it's a really important time to be pushing law and policy in space, because we need law and policy to go hand in hand with the technology. But all of my students, you know, they're doing papers, and they're doing the Journal of Space Law, and they're doing extra classes, and they're doing, you know, and this generation, you know, they get a bad rap, but there are a lot of them who just really are putting their heads down and getting things done, and have goals and visions and dreams, and working really, really hard to get them. And my goal is to help them achieve those dreams, and help the ones who don't have dreams yet realize that their dreams lie in space.
So
I told you she was going to be a great president.
Oh, I knew that already. This question is for all three of you, but we might as well start with Michelle since she's on a roll. So the NSS's overarching mission is to accelerate and enable the human settlement of space, as we all know. This includes all nationalities, ethnicities, and gender identities. So I'd like to know your thoughts on how we can best strive to accomplish and enable this from our position.
So thank you. And it gives me the perfect opportunity to, I don't know if you've seen it, but Preservation has partnered with the Navajo Nation. And so the sites on Mars that they're going to are being named in the Navajo language, which I just think is incredible. And, you know, what a way to try and open up space. So I think I think NSS has been really focused and understood the need for diversity in the space industry for a long time. And I think, we had a real awakening this year. And everyone sort of looked inside and said, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden everyone was like, okay, well, we need to find a minority engineer, go. And that's not the answer. The answer is what Janet's doing, is find the K through 12, get them when they're 5 years old and make them want to be engineers, or make them understand they don't have to be engineers, they can be space lawyers, and so I think that really what I have realized is we're really looking at two things in terms of diversity. One is diversity within our own country, which is something we really have to address, that concept of equity and making sure we're bringing our neighbors with us. And it's also the concept of developing nations, non-spacefaring nations, because space is international. And I know I took a peek at some of the questions, and it's called the National Space Agency. Do we need to rebrand? No, but we do. We look, and I'm chair of the International Committee. We look at space from an international lens, from a human lens. This is the National Space Society is what it's called because it's based here in this nation. But we look at space through a human lens. And so when we think about diversity, we are already doing such incredible things with students from all over the world. And we just really need to, I think, that is one of the ways to help. I would love for my students, my law students, to mentor some of these younger students, get the students who are building and developing and space settlement designs, and have the lawyers come in and knock them down a bit, because that's life. And and have my lawyers who don't know that much about technology be told, well, no, you can't, that's not the way oxygen works, or whatever. That's what we need, is these conversations. And I think the primary foundation for doing that is listening to children, and not speaking over them, and not speaking beyond them, and not patting them on the head, because they have some really good ideas. And even those ideas that are not even remotely possible, you can draw them back and think, okay, well, wait, you have a nugget there, let's work on it. And so I think, to me, it's been really important to listen. It doesn't matter what age you are, but the adults, the grown-ups, it would be gray hair. If I didn't dye it, the gray hairs need to listen more.
Jeff?
And just to build on that, I am so delighted that I'm going to get to know you. I'm already going, all right, you're going to come and speak at several of our Explore Mars events. But just this past Saturday, we had the opportunity with my friend who does Space for Women podcast. And so she decided to do something called Space for Kids. So she says, who do you want? So we had Ander, who's 11, talking about his Mars menu. And I mean, he was made his case that we all are going to have to be vegan and those kinds of things, had a beet ball pizza. Then there is Nathan, who is 12, and he was talking about RS-25 engines and how the flow and combustion and stuff works. Then there was Weston, who's 11, who's also talking, and then there was Adia, who's talking about wanting to play music on Mars. And it was, again, we tried to prep them, but I didn't want to prep them too much, because I'm like you, Michelle, you got to push kids out of their comfort zone and then let them find that sort of, what's going on here, and do I enjoy this? And we have had such profound feedback from people in the space industry now who want their children to watch it or have their kids involved. And to me, it's just, it's where we always have to meet people where they are and start talking about, whether it's like we talk about MOXIE, the instrument that's going to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. We can go, did you also know that it is a great beverage that people love in Boston, and is a tonic, and is also an indigenous people's word that has like other things that are related to that. So you want to try to find any multiple connection points, and then begin to kind of position those mentors with these younger folks. And I just think that this is the way forward. This is how I see somebody really loves your line that you said about dreams that live in space. And there are, again, if you lean in hard enough. Today I was doing something as simple as with kids in Ohio, and we were making lunar landers out of paper plates. I mean, Anita Gale, you've probably done this 1,000 times. What an amazing thing you've done with education, you and Lynn and all the people that have worked alongside you guys. But when you encourage an 11-year-old where you can see literally everything in the background of their house, and she's talking about, and now I'm going to put this communication device on there. And again, it's paper plates and cups and straws, but she's thinking about how this mechanism might make it through the vacuum of the moon. And it's like, oh, we can't land too hard. We don't want to sink down in that regolith. So you sneak in the science while they're making a craft. And then all of a sudden you got a connection, and then you tell them the most positive of prophecies. And I think that's what we need to do with all of our good space people. It's not just, I don't want this to all be about education, but it's about education for whatever age you are, to like invite you in. What is your knowledge? Are you an additive manufacturer? Are you a culinary chef? How would you make something that would be a great, delicious meal that would be freeze dried, that would taste great after we, kind of like import it, and put it with some water or something. So it's just, I think that it's like getting the conversation and never tiring of trying to figure out different ways to keep that conversation going. I think that's how we do it. And maybe, and again, guys, let's face it, relationship often happens in the micro long before it ever happens in the macro. And so there's nearly a call to action for all of us that are on this call. It's like, start making your very own community fall in love with what you love. My grandkids know Jan loves space. Jan, I saw this thing. And so now they're talking to me. It was like, of course I love this stuff. Let's go play spaceship, right? So it's like, it starts in your own little community, and then you spread it out and you become ambassadors that are ambassadors of the universe in this thing called exploration. And I think that's how we keep connecting people to people and concept to concept, hopefully.
Okay, Jeff, let's get your comment, and then we're going to go into the speed round because we've got 2 pages of questions to get through.
Very good.
I talk too much. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
So Janet said community, Michelle said listen, and I will tell a brief story to illustrate how strongly I agree with these two sentiments. Last year, Rod and myself, together with our excellent colleagues, Aggie Coburn and Tony Postun, produced a very, very ambitious show. It was not meant to take the place of ISDC, but since we couldn't do ISDC 2020 in person, we wanted to offer an alternative that was meaningful. So we came up with this A Day in Space, 7-hour long program. And I asked my great friend, Dr. Cyan Proctor, to co-host with me. She is one of the most brilliant science advocates. She spoke at Tony's CI Live yesterday. She was just voted by the Explorers Club one of the 50 most important explorers working today. She's a great advocate for exploration and adventure and fun. So I was so pleased with myself. I thought we had such a good, diverse program representing all sorts of different viewpoints and backgrounds. And I asked Cyan how we were doing, and she said, well, you're very good. It's very good in one way, but it's very poor in the other. And that is that there's hardly anyone appearing on your day-long broadcast that's under 40. And I said, oh my gosh, you're right. How do we fix that? And she said, well, we could ask a lot of younger spaceflight professionals and students to do something. So we figured out a way. We came up with this idea to do about a 1 minute or a 1 to 2 minute message from the Space Gen. And we animated a background and we cut them into the broadcast. But I said, so Cyan had the observation, she had the community. I said, can you fix it? And she goes, yeah, I know 10 to 15 really good Space Gen people. And I said, get them from all over the world, get them these different backgrounds and everything as you can. And she got a brilliant woman from Israel, a brilliant woman from Indonesia. And we had these perspectives, these short perspectives that were cut into the show. And it ended up being one of my favorite things about the broadcast. So there's community. She had the community, and there's listening. And I've always been really hard on myself about never being one of those people who says, well, you know, when you've been in broadcasting as long as I have, or when you've been doing science as long as I have, you know everything, and we don't. Kids today don't know anything. I hate that person. I've worked for that person, and I never wanted to be that person. I always want to hear the young person who has the great idea that I don't even know the tech they're talking about, but I want to. So we must leave our minds open to ideas of the next generation and not try and stifle them and go, no, no, no. When you get to be my age, you'll understand. No, no, no. If we were their age, we would understand. We must embrace new ideas and new technology, or we just become stuffy and old and boring.
Okay, so this is the quick answer section. So I'm going to ask this to Michelle or Jeff. Either one of you could field it. Question is, how can we better support chapters, which are the heart of the NSS, and the best way to deliver grassroots space advocacy? And Michelle, you're sort of new, so I don't know how much exposure you've had the chapter situation. Jeff, you know about it, but either one of you.
Well, I want to just jump in and say, I think Jeff's idea was great, is have the president go to each chapter. And, you know, not that we're some big celebrity on high, but, you know, to have one figure, one person go around to every chapter and sort of understand what's going on and have that person help, you know, bind the chapters together. I think maybe hosting forums of the chapters so the chapters can talk about what they've been doing. I know that I visited the St. Louis chapter, Christine, I mean, that chapter is fantastic. I had a great time. I would go back in a heartbeat. The drive was a little bit farther than I thought it was from Oxford. Well, and it's on Zoom now, but it's, I think the chapters, the chapters are a great way to create that community and create that listening. And so, you know, it's something that I think is very difficult because you really have to rely on the chapter leadership to make an effort as well. And so in any way that we can support the chapter leadership, and if that means maybe there should be chapter leader meetings, you know, let's have more Zoom meetings. This is what I'm really good at. Yeah, let's have a meeting on that. But I think, again, it's seeing the faces and building that community. And the one good thing that's come out of this time of COVID is that we are now all comfortable in this format. And so we don't necessarily have to get on a plane and fly to get this kind of contact.
So Jeff, let me ask this question to you. Since you're a globetrotter and an explorer and adventurer and a bunch of other hyphens, how can the NSS become better integrated in the international setting, in your opinion?
I like the idea of inviting students from other countries to come to ISTC. That's one thing that's been very effective, which Lynn has been very active with. And that was one of my first exposures. One of my first experiences of NSS was going to ISTC and being invited by Lynn to go to the poster sessions and see the projects that the kids were working on. And I really loved that. We have such a strange situation in that we feel, well, we're separated from by distance from Australia, but as was just said, we have discovered through this awful COVID menace that we don't necessarily have to go physically anymore and do things. And I love one of the things that you came up with, Rod, which was for the Space Settlement 2021 broadcast that was done so recently, that was so successful and very technically proficient, if I may compliment you and the team on that. And while it was not as quite as broad in scope as Day in Space, I felt that it was technically further advanced. And I know that you scheduled a special broadcast of the Space Settlement seminar, virtual seminar, so that it would be accessible for viewers in India, where, as we all know, there is an enormous and active spaceflight community in India. So realizing that, going back to what Michelle said, yes, we're called the National Space Society, but we are the International Space Society. And yes, headquarters may be in the US, and yes, we may have many of our chapters here, and many of the board members are in the United States. But let's not forget that we do represent countries all across the world. And I've had developed a wonderful relationship with Robert Ayon in Ecuador, to whom I just introduced Michelle, who's a space activist who started a local spaceflight organization and has and Leviathan Space Industries. So you could do that one at a time. You'd spend your whole life doing it, connecting with with groups one at a time in different countries, or we could make it a priority. We could have a group that reaches out and tries to facilitate this. And in my 2 years as president, I've had many requests from people, direct messages on Twitter from someone in another country saying, I'd like to start a chapter, how do I do it? So perhaps we could make, I'm not the first person to say this, but perhaps we could make the process of starting a new chapter easier for people in other countries, and hopefully find a way to make them feel more included, not more than a listing at the back of Ad Astra. Is there a more enjoyable and effective subset of the website? Are there more social media avenues? I'm not sure, but I don't know necessarily the answer. But I agree with Michelle that it is at least in part human contact, and with Janet that it's community. If we want people to be part of it, we have to make them feel valued, not like it's just some thing that's stuck on to the American NSS. We must adopt a more global mentality and make people feel welcome. And as you did, Rod, specifically tailor events that are more attractive and convenient for our esteemed members in other countries. So it's not just always on our time zone. And I know we can do it because our chair of the board of directors, Kirby Eichen, lives in Australia, and he always manages to make the calls. So it can be done. We just have to think, outside of this time zone. Astronauts probably are very good at thinking outside of time zone. So I'm sure that we can do it.
And you're in Arizona.
And my clock is from Germany, and it's in Arizona. So there's internationalism in action.
It's Arizona where you have real weird time zone situations going. Janet, this one's for you by default. It says, what is your goal for NSS and Explore Mars? But I think we could rephrase that as, what crossover and cooperation do you see potential for?
Yeah, for any way that Explore Mars can support, going to the moon and space settlement and any kind of cislunar living. It's like, we will definitely kind of, make sure that we're absolutely supporting all of those kinds of thoughts and endeavors. I would like to just see partnerships and collaborations. It's like, we talked a little bit about this when we kind of were going over some of the questions, but it's like, we are clearly an organization dedicated to getting to Mars. And I can remember our Vice President, Joe Cassidy, saying the year that I came on board, they're like, what happens after you get to Mars? It's like, explore and sell it us happens. It's like we switch it to that. But I think, everybody has their passion projects. And of course, ours is getting humans to Mars, but figuring out ways that we can collaborate. Is there an educational endeavor that we can, both promote? And Explore Mars begins to promote your space settlement? Or is there a way, there's some educational thing that we just combine, and it's an NSS and Explore Mars, co-sponsored event? I just think that it's like the statement I want to create, Michelle, and I hope you'll come with, I hope you agree and want to come with, is that if we are telling your students who are in college, my students who are K through 12, that we're going to go back to the moon as the first female and the next humans, and we're creating these Artemis Accords, and we're going to Mars for all humanity, we got to look like all humanity, and that humans are capable of doing powerful things as we partner together. So my goal is finding those very, very special projects or special co-sponsored or collaborative events, and that everybody goes, whoa, organizations working together. How about them apples? What a keen concept. That's my hope, that again, we're here to support the endeavor of the moon, because getting to the moon means we're one step closer to Mars, or several steps closer to Mars. And, I think as the moon and all of that kind of architecture happens, again, that's just another way to support our organization and our endeavors as well. But I think just wherever we can support one another, and a broad statement to the globe that this is how good humans interact. We say yes, and we say come and be part of, and we include everybody.
Can I just add something that will tie both
Sure,
of those excellent statements together? Because
questions for you anyway.
I think the one thing we have at the National Space Society is we've been a permanent observer to the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space for decades. And that gives us the opportunity to rub shoulders with delegates and other permanent observers. It gives us that opportunity to make statements on a global stage, a truly global stage, that will help bring people together and appeal to maybe have other countries create. But what the other thing that NSS does, and I hold out my hand to you in partnership and collaboration. If Mars reports that Mars Explorers would like to make a statement at the COPOIS, introduce yourself to the delegates, you can do that through the National Space Society because we have that platform. It's a struggle to get there in person, but it will be, it is virtual or hybrid this year in April and in June. And we are just now sort of forming the important issues that we are going to make at the COPOIS. So I would love to talk to you about getting a statement about Mars Explorers in there, and sort of making sure our statements are as broad as possible. One thing that I've been working on at the International Committee is, there's power in numbers. So we're trying to get a coalition of permanent observers to agree on one subject that we will all push at this next COPOIS. And so, is it going to be orbital debris, or, hopefully it'll be heritage, but, we'll see. And so I think the NSS is perfectly poised to get that international platform and to help organizations like yours that don't necessarily have that voice yet, and help them find that voice.
I'm in.
Great.
This is the virtual handshake. You all saw it here. There you go.
Janet, you're so much fun.
We have a bunch more questions, but we've also got some stuff that's coming in now. So let me just pick one more, which is a very broad question, and this could be for any of you. And I don't envy you the answer. How can the NSS be much more effective in guiding America's growth into space?
How can it be more effective in guiding what?
America's growth into space. So in furthering our endeavors.
Oh.
And I suppose that means either through NASA or the private sector, or hopefully both.
So, yeah, I think the law. I'm a lawyer. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
We need the right laws. We need the right regulations. We have an outer space treaty that we need to abide by, and we have to understand, we need to fill those gaps. And the April 22nd forum, my law students are going to talk about not my ideas, not Ram Jacque's or some space lawyer's ideas, not the State Department's ideas, but their own ideas on how we fill the gaps in the space treaty, and how we understand property in space, and how we understand how to, deconflict things with regard to orbital debris, mining operations, and so forth. So the path to for all of humanity to space, it has got to be paved by the right regulations, because otherwise it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be successful. And I think the powers that be at NSS have recognized that, because they're taking took a leap of faith with me, a lawyer, to become the president. But this is the time, because not only are we talking about not crushing an industry under regulation, we're talking about preserving and saving human rights for those space, for our new communities in space. And so the laws that we're designing right now, the laws that my students are going to be drafting, are the ones that are going to be the foundation for all of humanity throughout the universe. No pressure, kids.
What a great statement that is.
It is. And Jeff or Janet, if you have anything to add, we've got time for a short response, and then I'm going to throw it back to Bert for the final questions.
I would like to ask Michelle a question, if I may, an opinion. So Michelle, as you know, I have a great affection for meteorites and asteroids, and I was an advisor to Deep Space Industries in the early days. Who do you think should own an asteroid? Asteroid mining is going to be so important to us in the future once we have established a permanent presence in space. So who gets dibs on an asteroid? Is it the first robot ship there? Is it the first human ship there? Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm a full-on, if you mine it, you own it. I interpret the Outer Space Treaty to say you can't claim territory, but you can certainly utilize the resources. I think an asteroid is a lot easier than the moon, because depending on the size of the asteroid, you can actually claim the whole asteroid, right? If you are having a mining operation and it would be damaging, or somehow if somebody else landed on the asteroid, they would interfere with it. What I think the bigger issue is going to be bringing the developing countries, the non-spacefaring countries with us in terms of, you think about the orbits, right? The ITU is saving orbits and radio frequencies for countries that don't have satellites yet. And so we really need to make sure, however we decide to govern this utilization of asteroids, that it is done in such a way that nobody feels left behind. And that's a very different statement from, oh, if you mine it, you have to share it with everybody. There are a lot of ways to make sure people aren't left behind. But I'm sorry, capitalism works. And if you have made the investment and if you've figured out how to mine that asteroid, it's why I'm where I am right now, because that's what my son wants to do when he gets out of the Navy. He wants to mine asteroids. And he asked me when he was 10 years old, he said, this is what I want to do. And I know that the law is all messed up and you're a lawyer, so can you fix it for me? So I only have like 3 years left before he's out of the Navy. So, I'm working really fast.
So you're a belter. I'm looking for your OP8 tattoo. That's a reference to The Expanse for those of you.
Yeah, through
me
and
too.
through. Absolutely.
Right on. All right. I knew I liked you.
And
All right.
Rod,
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I am tremendously excited that folks like you are in charge and of directing this conversation. And I do think the kids will have a powerful ways that we can do so, and hopefully sustainably and peacefully, and those kind of things. I did want to give a couple of shout outs to some people I believe that are on the line. Frances Delutri, what a gift you are to NSS. Thank you. I mean, last year, she and Lynn willingly came when we were, stuck inside, and talked to a bunch of my students, even then online. NSS is in great hands. It's like Randy Gigante. It's like, if only I could go to March Storm and we could be on Capitol Hill right now trying to get Congress to listen to us about our next place in space. So again, just congratulations and thank you for making this happen tonight. And thank you, Jeff. You have served NSS so very well. And you're obviously passing the torch to somebody truly phenomenal. Cannot wait to get to know you better. And just to say to everybody here, one of the questions that was asked early on with me when I accepted the presidency of Explore Mars, they were like, will you be giving up your NSS Board of Governors thing? And I was like, no, because I love both organizations. I believe in both these causes, and I have been so privileged and blessed by the people that I've met. And so again, you are coming into a fantastic organization with people who do it for all the right reasons and are standing firmly in their purpose. So I wish you the very best of luck. I can't wait to see all that you will do and your students will do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, and finally, I have to say, Jeff, I want to thank you for your service and the amazing things that you've done. You've been an inspiring and stabilizing presence in a lot of Wednesday meetings and across the board.
Thank you.
And your presentations are always extremely practiced and professional. I not only learn from them, but I'm intimidated by them, I'd have to say, at times. And we really appreciate it. And if you think for a minute you're getting away from the magazine, you are sadly mistaken, because your service there is valued and needed. So you're not going anywhere, buddy. Bert, do you want to come back in and possibly field a couple of questions and wrap this up?
Rod, can I just, sorry.
Of course.
I just want to say, I don't know many of you very well yet. My introduction to NSS was through David Dunlop, who got me involved. And I didn't know what to expect when I met him. And I can't be more thankful and grateful that he introduced me to you. And so I'm so thrilled to be where I am today. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Rod, and thank you, Janet and Michelle and Jeffrey. This was a lot of fun. Before we close out, I just wanted to open it up to a few of the questions we got in through the Q&A function. Now, we do have one individual who raised their hand and would like to ask a question verbally. So we're going to turn on his mic, and Carl is one of our chapter officers. So And Carl, if you could keep it very brief because we want to close out and make sure everyone has a chance. Carl, can you hear us? You have to
Carl is
unmute,
muted.
Carl. Yep, he's not unmuting. Carl?
Maybe he stepped away for a moment.
How
Oh,
about
there he is.
now? Can you
There
hear me
you
now?
go. Now we hear you, Carl. Great. Thank you.
All right, all right. Carl Rico, Space and Astronomy Society of Northwest Jersey. In talking about the idea of fostering America's place in space, that seems to be in contradiction to a globalization of it in terms of international diversity. And involving that, would NSS consider the promotion of, say, helping other countries in their technology, and including scientists from, say, North Korea, China, and Syria, and possibly the continuation with Russia? Would that be a prospect?
And who wants to answer that one?
Oh,
I guess
Michelle's
that's a
the new
Michelle
president.
question.
She should handle that.
Well, and she's the legal scholar, so.
So finding America's place in space doesn't mean nobody else can be in space.
Right.
You know, having sort of a national center is something that every nation does right now. We are a sovereign-based society right now. I would love to erase that sovereign paradigm when we get to space, and that's something we're trying to do through For All Mankind. We're creating a universality of space activity, recognizing our heritage, human heritage, not as US heritage or Chinese heritage or Russian heritage. So I think inherently, you know, we're just not in a place right now where we can explore space except through that national lens. As far as bringing other developing nations along, you know, I am looking at the Artemis Accords, and I personally, you know, I would obviously can't speak for NSS without getting the approval of the policy committee and the XCOM and so forth and board. But personally, I'm hoping that the Artemis Accords, the next countries that sign on are developing countries or non-spacefaring countries, because I think we have a lot to offer those countries. As far as partnering with China or Russia or North Korea, you know, that is above probably even NSS's pay grade right now. I don't think, I personally, as the president of NSS, don't think it makes sense to get into those political fights right now. I think we have an awful lot to focus on with respect to space communities and building a vibrant commercial sector without getting bogged down in the politics of, you know, geopolitical races and so forth. I think if we focus on commercial space, all of that will go away. It's something I'm really working on. Is we need a bottom-up approach to space, not a top-down approach. And we need to erase that sovereign paradigm. And to do that, we're not going to start talking about dividing people and angering people. We're just going to talk about supporting the people who are doing it right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Well
Carl.
said.
Any other comments on that, or we'll go on to the next question?
I just want to say to Carl that I was a regular at the Franklin Mineral Show in North Jersey for many years. Carl, I used to live in Hoboken. So thanks for phoning in. Nice to meet you.
Hey, I'm glad you mentioned Dunlop, Dunlop Observatory, because I used to show a movie that was made regarding Dunlop called The Universe in my class quite some time ago. And that interested me in astronomy and space.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Well, we all have that in common.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks,
Thank
Carl.
you.
I just want to acknowledge Perry. Perry has put in a number of comments in the Q&A function about engaging with students and has provided a lot of links for schools and other organizations. So I've copied all those, Perry, and we'll definitely pass those on. It looks like some good ideas. So and I think there was also a question that Michelle, you answered about the copious already. So I don't know if you saw that one question from Wes. It sounded like you answered that one already.
She covered that. Yeah.
Yes. Sounds good. So the other question is kind of an ending question that Xavier had for Jeff, and I'll add on one other question to top that. She said, Jeff, is there something that you wish you could have got to as president of the NSS that time just did not allow for. And then my follow-on questions, Jeff, is, are you going to miss flying on NSS 1 as president? So,
I thought you said I got to keep NSS 1 in my hangar. Wait a second.
no,
Well,
we had to transfer.
Last. Well, thank you for that question. There are multiple things that I wish I could have done more of or better. I suppose my biggest disappointment is that we didn't get to make the space flight documentary series Destination Universe that I really wanted to do. Rod was my science advisor writer on that. So perhaps when I accepted the presidency, I may have come on a bit strong. I'm not really sure, but I dream big dreams, and my vision was that NSS would have its own flight documentary show called Destination Universe. And we did start producing that. There was some difference of opinion amongst some of the officers as to whether or not this was the right thing to do. And I didn't want to start my presidency by sowing discord. So I shelved that project, and I went on to do other things. That project still exists. We may still do that. I also started a short film series called Views on Space, Views from Space, and Cyan Proctor, whom I mentioned earlier, was the star of the first one. I wish we could have done more of those, and maybe we still will. But I think that our successes have been enormous. Social media, Day in Space, the improvement, wonderful growth of Ad Astra into a world-class magazine, and appointing some new and younger members. Lots and lots of good was done. And it just takes me back to what I said at the beginning. I had to try and narrow my vision a bit because I'm very excitable and I go, oh my gosh, look at all this opportunity. And then it's a question of focusing on them a bit. But wonderful question. And yes, if I could just make it so, I would make it that Destination Universe lived, and it would be our show. And you know what? Maybe it still will.
Very good.
Thank you.
That,
wonderful question.
Yeah, on that very positive note, thank you, Jeff. I thank you again for your service as president. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I look forward to working with you in other capacities now, and look forward to working with you, Michelle, as well as you take over as president, and Janet, continuing to work with you in your NSS capacity and Explore Mars. So it's been a very, very fun discussion. Very interesting, eye-opening at times. And so I appreciate all you do, and just thank you for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure. And Rod, thank you so much for moderating. Can't ask for a better moderator, and you kept the flow going. So we appreciate that. So everybody, I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. What I'm going to do now is just go back to share my screen really quickly so that I can close out the session. And just wishing you a special thank you for attending tonight. I hope you had an enjoyable time. We look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks with Dale Scran's presentation. So wishing you, for those in the evening time zone, a great evening. For those into the next day, a great day ahead, and also a weekend coming up. So enjoy it. I want you all to stay safe, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. So thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
And I want to
thank you, everyone.
And thank Fred Becker for all his work, and Larry Ahern. So again, everyone, wishing you a good night.
Good night,
Charles.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.